Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. This show and all episodes are brought to you by Never Too Hungover. Never Too Hungover is a healthy vitamin blend that helps neutralize toxins, restore vital nutrients, and rehydrate the body. It is the best tasting and most effective way to help prevent or recover from hangovers. There are two types: prevention, which you drink before or during your wild night out on the town. And if you've had too many Vegas bombs and are still struggling the next day, the boost will help set you straight. Thanks for the samples, Never Too Hungover. Juice in the Morning listeners, use the promo code JUICEBOX for 25% off your order. You can use that on their website at nevertoohungover.com, and you can also use that same promo code, and that is JUICEBOX on Amazon.com. This week's guest is Brad Maushart from Wish TV 8. He is a friend of mine. He's calling in to talk about Hurricane Irma. I hope you guys enjoy. It was a very interesting convo. He educated me quite a bit on storms. Next week, I will be recording a live podcast at the Colts home opener. We're going to be live from the tailgate, and we're going to be drinking some beers and breaking down some football, breaking down some tailgate foods, breaking down some tailgate games. Come join us, guys. It'll be a good time. All right, on the phone with us is Wish TV 8 meteorologist Brad Maushart. How you doing, buddy? This is the second time you're coming on the podcast.
Second time. I didn't get to make that 50th anniversary show. Unfortunately, I don't know what happened there, Justin. But
I dropped the ball on that one.
No, it's been busy the last couple of days. It's obviously been really nice here in Indiana, but outside of here, down to the southeast, obviously we've been talking Irma.
Yes.
It's been the big talking point, and it's not just because we're going to see a lot of impacts here, at least not immediately, but a lot of people up here have friends and they have family. Members
absolutely.
Down there, living down there. So, it's something we've been keeping a close eye on just so people can keep up to date without having to, switch over to some national broadcast.
Yeah.
This storm we've been covering it over a week. I mean, even when it was out in the open Atlantic, it was potent.
And that's one of the questions I have is, like, how advanced is the tracking technology? Because I feel like we've been talking about this storm already for a long time before it's actually hit where we're kind of worried about it hitting.
Yeah, I mean, since the 60s, satellite era, we've been able to, keep an eye on the open Atlantic to see what storms have been coming in terms of tracking or just having a good idea of where that's been going. We have a general idea, and the forecasts have actually been pretty good with this. There's been a few little quips here and there where it's kind of shifted a little bit here or there. I know earlier in the week, towards, I think, Monday, Tuesday-ish, this week, it would look like it was maybe going to be a chance to see in the Carolinas, and as the week goes on, it kind of trended a little bit further westward. Then it looked like more of a Miami direct hit, and then towards the middle of the week to the end of the week, about Thursday or so, we really had a pretty good lock that this thing was going to trend more westward and go over towards the Keys, towards the west coast of Florida. So, even out of 3, 4, 5 days, it's been pretty good.
Yeah.
But before that, we can track these things before they even develop into a tropical system, be it a depression or a tropical storm, as they come off as what we call tropical waves off the coast of Africa. You can see these things coming. So there's one over there now that's probably going to be our next one.
There's like one following, right?
Well, there's Jose, who's out there right now. Still a pretty potent storm there. Then we also have, let me think here. I've lost track of the names, but there's another another wave that's kind of coming over here towards the Cape Verde Islands right now that has a pretty good chance for the next 5 days, about 60% chance to become our next name system. Let me look up the names real quick. Well, I've been so tied up with Irma. Yeah.
While you look that up, this is a softball question for all of the unintelligent listeners like myself. What defines a hurricane? Like, what makes it a hurricane?
Okay, so it's based off of, compared to tornadoes. Tornadoes, we give it an EF scale, the Enhanced Fujita scale. It's 0 to 5.
Yeah.
EF 0 to EF 5. That's based off of damage. That's after the fact because it's really hard to measure winds inside a tornado. So it's an estimated wind speed based off of damage.
Okay.
So you have engineers that go out after the fact because there's such a small scale. And some, they'll spin up within a quick, there's no time to get a sensor in there to see how fast it's moving. So you have to estimate the damage. Now, hurricanes, a little slower moving. but way more catastrophic just in terms of the effects. They're more widespread. But you have a better idea, days in advance that they're going to be there. It's not a quick 5-minute spin up and then it's gone. I mean, it's there. You know where it's going. So they have to measure the wind speeds. They do that by either dropping what we call dropsondes, instrument packages from planes down into the storm. You can also estimate when they're still out in the open Atlantic. You can estimate them with satellites. Where our technology's gotten so good, there's ways to estimate the wind speeds and intensity via cloud top, how cool the cloud tops are, and some other stuff to just estimate the strength and intensity of hurricanes. So, so in terms of hurricanes, it's based on wind speed.
Okay.
They're both based on wind speed, but to the extent of how you measure it. Now, in terms of wind speeds, you start on the low end with what's called a tropical depression. And in terms of total miles per hour,
that's when somebody lives
20,
in the
30 miles per hour ish, give or take.
Somebody lives in the tropics and they're really sad about what's going on around them.
Everybody in Florida right now is tropically depressed, I promise you, or they will be here really soon. Some stuff isn't too bad yet. I'll get more into what's going on with Irma here in a second. So you get the tropical storm strength. After you get past 37 miles per hour, you start working your way up, and eventually you'll get to what is, the hurricane strength, and that is at 74 miles per hour. That's where you get to Cat 1.
Yeah.
And you work your way up from there. So where we're at right now with Irma, it's currently sitting at a Cat 3. It made landfall as a Cat 4, and I'll get in the notable records here too in a second. But Cat 3 is when you start getting to what we call major hurricanes, 3, 4, and 5. So it's on a scale 1 to 5. 1 and 2 in tropical storms, they're all kind of pretty potent in their own right, and they can be very dangerous. Once you get to 3, the damage from those winds, it starts going up exponentially. You get, I think the scale is somewhere around the lines of, you'll have 100 times the damage with a Category 3, 250 times the damage with a Category 4, and 500 times the damage, I think, with a Category 5. The winds, I mean, after a while, everything just can't hold on. You can have a really well-built house, but it's still not going to be there if you get hit by. And these are, different in a tornado, too. These winds are sustained. You might
that's
have
what
a
I was going
tornado
to say.
come by
Like
at a
constant.
mile wide, it's 60 miles an hour, and it's there for a minute.
Yeah.
So you're dealing with, very violent, very, tightly wound winds for that. It can cause a lot of damage, but it's on a narrow path.
Yeah.
This is 100, let's say, where it was out in the Atlantic at 185 miles an hour. For a long time.
That's insane.
It was at 37 hours straight that it was at 185 miles per hour. Actually, that might have even changed. Let me look back here at the updated records. It was at 185 miles per hour max winds. That was sustained winds for 37 hours.
Jesus.
So over a day, almost a day and a half. That's the longest that any cyclone around the globe, not just in the Atlantic basin, but also the globe, has maintained that kind of intensity. The previous was a storm called Haiyan. That was in the northwestern Pacific that lasted that long for 24 hours.
Yeah.
So in terms of the what we call now, you have the advanced Fujita scale. That's for tornadoes. We also have the Saffir-Simpson scale. And that's for tropical storms and hurricanes. So tropical storm strength starts at 39 miles per hour. I think it said 37. It's 39.
Yeah.
And then it goes up to, once you get to a Category 1, starts at 74 miles per hour. Category 2 is sustained winds at least 96 miles per hour. 3, where we're at now, and this is after one initial landfall, and it's kind of skirting the coast of Florida, so it's weakening a bit. But even a 3 is still what we call a major hurricane. That's between 111 and 129 miles per hour. So it's probably right around 120, 25 right now. So still a potent Category 3. And where it was when it made landfall this morning, I think it was a low-end Category 4 between about 130, 140 miles an hour. Category 5
has it been
doing sustained over 157. So
has it been doing much damage yet? I mean, I know we're kind of living in the future right now with this podcast because I'm going to release the podcast on Monday. So we're kind of like the stuff we're talking about already
Back to the future.
It's already going to happen.
So I mean, there's going to be a lot of stuff that changes. It's just now getting ready to make its second landfall. The eye wall, as we're talking, is now moving into Naples.
Okay.
And Marco Island. Those are very populated places. A lot of a lot of infrastructure in those areas. That's going to be significant damage with this next the actual eye wall coming in.
Yeah.
And then on the backside, of course, they have the storm surge. In terms of what's already happened, I mean, this storm is making landfall on the west coast of Florida.
Yeah.
On the east coast of Florida, we've had 2 construction cranes go down in Miami. They're seeing catastrophic flooding right now in their financial district.
Good Lord.
And really don't know how bad that's going to be in Miami, at least not yet. This is not fresh water coming in either. This is salt water coming in. So obviously it's corrosive, and if you don't clean it up, down the road, it will eventually cause more problems.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, this whole thing's sliding up the west coast. It's still not even close yet to Tampa Bay or Sarasota or St. Petersburg. Hasn't yet moved in.
Yeah.
And already right now, the latest estimate I think I saw was, let me think here. I think it was over 1.15 million people or something. It was 15% of the state of Florida.
Yeah.
But it's over 1 million people that are without power, and that's only going to go up. It's still not done yet.
So I know that it is devastating, and it sucks when it hits into populated areas like this. As a meteorologist, does this kind of stuff, is it exciting, or do you prefer the weather to be kind of like 72 and sunny most days?
I mean, it depends on, I find this kind of thing exciting. It's going to happen whether I want it to or not.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's going to happen. Do I want it to happen to people? No, I'd rather, people be all right with their homes and whatever and whatnot. But to me, it's something to talk about. Whereas if I worked in Southern California or a desert area, I'd be talking about how hot it was every day and sunny. I mean, that would be boring and repetitive for me. I mean, there's nothing for me as a broadcast meteorologist. So we get, tired of talking about these things.
Yeah.
So this and that, like I said, here, the weather's been perfect for almost, the last month or so. We really haven't seen a whole lot of rainfall, so it's been really boring here. But we've had a lot of stuff to talk about between Harvey and then now, that was a whole week-long ordeal, and now we have obviously Irma that's pushing its way on in. We might have Jose impacting the East Coast, Northeast Coast by about 10 days from now or 9 days from now. So that's something we might be able to talk about. I mean, it does give people something to talk about, and people, they enjoy seeing type. They don't like seeing the damage, but they do enjoy, having something like this to see, to talk about it. It amazes people.
Yep.
Weather's the one part of the news that impacts everybody in some way.
Yeah.
Compared to other things, sports, some people might not like sports, but weather, you don't really have a choice. This does impact you.
Exactly.
So people like it, even though it's, catastrophic. It brings awful damage and obviously has, life toll impacts, something like that. But it's definitely something people to an extent enjoy.
Yeah. And so for you, I know we've talked about the storm chasing days kind of on the last time you were on the show. Would you ever want to travel to where the Irma is touching down and all that stuff? Would you want to be in the middle of that, or are you trying to stay away from that?
Well, I've been inside a tornado before. Not
so you've already been there.
Inside a tornado, and then that was not ideal.
Yeah.
Don't want to be back inside of one of those. That was an EF3, so that's where you start getting your, violent tornadoes. Don't ever want to be back in one of those. Now, from a photography aspect, I like photography. I like to chase storms.
Yeah.
Tornadoes are my favorite because they're actually photogenic. You can see stuff, limited chance of damaging the camera. It's to me, you can keep your feet dry and enjoy to an extent. Obviously, again, you don't root for these things, but if they're going to happen, you might as well make the best of a bad situation, in my opinion. But hurricanes, the problem with that, I was in Irene in 2011 down in North Carolina, where it made landfall in Beaufort. It was a Category 1 storm. So that was a low-end hurricane. It had winds, I think, sustained close to maybe 90 miles an hour, almost 100 miles an hour, with gusts higher than that. And it was a very wide hurricane, similar to this, but it was just weaker.
Yeah.
And, I mean, we had winds that were sustained over 60 miles an hour. And then people are thinking, 60 miles an hour. They hear all these numbers, like 185, blah, 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 blah. They hear 60, and they're like, that sounds like a weak hurricane, or 75 miles an hour. That sounds like nothing. It won't do anything. So I always tell people, okay, go ahead, and the next time you're driving down the interstate at 70 miles an hour, stick your hand out the window and let me know what that feels like.
Exactly.
And then do it again when it's raining outside. Go ahead and stick your hand out the window at 70 miles an hour. It feels like you're getting pressure washed. I mean, even with just the wind, it'll bend your arm back. I mean, it's hard to stand up in 70 mile per hour wind. So A hurricane is a hurricane for a reason. Even in a Cat 1, it can cause some catastrophic damage. I know power was out on the East Coast for a long time with that one, and that was a weekend, weaker hurricane. This set is a high 3, low 4 in some aspects, is going to knock out power for a long time. That's why we tell people, even if and the wind is really not the big killer in a hurricane. 90% of deaths come from the water, and the storm surge hasn't even really been bad yet in Florida. I know they had a 10-foot to 14-foot storm surge in the Keys, and they really don't know the damage extent of that.
When they say 13, 14-foot storm surge, what is the storm surge? Like, I'm not
compared to normal sea level. Compared to normal sea level.
Okay.
That would be a rise 10 to. This does not include waves. It's just a rise in sea level 10 to 14 feet. So if your house sits 10 feet above sea level, a 14-foot storm surge would be 4 feet up on your door, on your house, and then you have the wind, and then you have the wave. So what happens, the area of low pressure, the eye of the hurricane, it's low pressure, so it naturally wants to rise. So in that eye, you have a rising motion of the water just under that. The pressure kind of bubbles up that water in the eye. On top of that, then, in what we call the right front quadrant, where you have all the highest winds, upwards of, let's say, now still sustained at about 120 miles an hour or so, you have all that wind at 120 miles per hour pushing the water towards the coast in that right front quadrant. So right now, Everglades City, they're in that right front quadrant. They're starting to see the winds really pick up. Where we've seen, I don't know if you've seen the pictures yet. I don't know if people listening have seen the pictures of the Bahamas and now Tampa Bay. They're seeing the water recede. Almost like what it does. It's a completely different thing, but it almost looks tsunami-ish.
Yeah, a girl that I'm friends
where
with
all the water goes
Snapchat,
out.
She's like, this is the lowest I've ever seen the tide. Like, she's like, it's like way far out there, and she can see like all the seaweed and all the rocks and shells and stuff that she's never been able to see where she lives in Florida.
Yeah, okay, so that's the one end of things. That's the wind taking all the water out. It's not sucking it out, but it's blowing it out. Plus, in the Bahamas, it looked really bad because they were also low tide, so it kind of, it looked a little worse than it was. But at the same time, so they have all this water pushing out. That's on the one side of the storm. Once that eye passes, winds are coming the opposite direction. So you have all these dummies, and excuse my language, but really you're really trying to get a Darwin Award, at least a nomination. If you're going out and walking out in some of the sludge and some of the whatnot on the ocean floor, because, yes, I get it. It's something incredible you've never seen before. And you want to go look at it. The same problem with tsunamis, and don't get me started on that, is people see that and they want to go out and say, wow, this is crazy. What's happening?
Yeah.
It doesn't take much because those winds are going to shift pretty quick. All that water is going to come rushing right back in.
Oh, my God.
And then on top of that, let's say you get stuck out there, and let's say your foot gets stuck, and it happens all the time in Alaska when they have low tides too. Between Fire Island and Anchorage, there's a little thing where people can run out, and sometimes people get stuck. Well, guess what? All that water comes rushing back.
Yeah.
And you are now below water, and you're stuck in the ground. It doesn't end up well for you. So
you're
people are out there.
You're not getting out of there.
You're not getting out of there. So storm surge is just water piled up. And then, of course, once it gets closer to shore, then it just keeps piling up. That's where you get that rise about 10 feet above where it should be. So they're expecting anywhere between about 10 to 15 in Marco Island. Unfortunately, a lot of the coastal areas there are going to be underwater for a little while until the winds start to, fizzle out a bit, and that'll allow the water to go back out to where it's normally supposed to be. And on top of that, then they have 10 to 12 inches of rain in some spots that's going to be falling on top of that. Then you throw on waves with 120-mile-per-hour winds, which could be 5, 10, 15 feet above that. So really, it's catastrophic. The storm surge is the worst of the worst, and that's how people end up dying a lot of times. I mean, even attics, let's say on a first floor, they go up the attic, their house fills up with water, and then it just keeps on going. Then they get trapped in the attic.
Oh, my God.
It's just... that's the worst part of the storm.
So what I mean, like, I know that by the time people hear this, a lot of stuff might have already happened. But I mean, what do you think? What do you think about the people not taking it seriously? Like, what do you think about the people that are out there, standing out, making YouTube videos and Instagram posts and things like that?
Well, some people, I know the meteorologists, for an instance, just the professional crowd that does this for a living. They generally know some safe spots. They know to look for higher ground ahead of time and plan escape routes and do that kind of thing. And they do it for a living. That's how they make money. They sell video to national organizations. And I can't blame them because I do it too. I've done it before. That's who I work for. I work for the news. They want to get the best shots.
Yeah, absolutely.
Some local broadcasters who have never seen a hurricane before are out there, and one almost got knocked out by a street sign today flying down the road, and it was like that funny GIF Somebody almost got taken out by a street sign. That happens. It's 120-mile-per-hour winds. These things come flying by and zinging by you. If you're standing under trees, you're in a danger zone.
Yeah, absolutely.
So some of the people that do this all the time are more, they know what to look for. They know how to pre-plan some things, and they do it well.
Mm-hmm.
Is it completely safe? No. You can get a power line that falls, a hot power line that falls into the water, and now you're electrocuted. I mean, just there are so many risks you have to think about before you do it. For the people that aren't experienced, I was watching a webcam out of Key West yesterday where there were some families with children and pets down there in Key West. It was a mandatory evacuation.
That's so ridiculous.
A mandatory evacuation, and you still had people down in Key West, where they were expecting a 10-foot storm surge, which they got. Mm-hmm. You know, the southernmost point of the continental United States. It's just, it blows my mind. You can't get through to some people. Some other people were on another national outlet yesterday. They did an interview with some people in a trailer park that were somewhere. They were inland a little bit in Florida. You know, winds at 100 miles an hour does not bode well for trailer parks.
Hell no.
Especially, even anchored down, it doesn't matter. The wind field will take it away and roll it.
Yeah.
And with all the flooding, they were expecting some catastrophic flooding up to about, again, 10 to 15 feet. They literally said on air, and I cannot – it blows my mind. We can't get through to some people, all right? There's just some people we cannot get through to. The danger. They said, it's all right. We have an inflatable mattress. We'll just float to safety. And they were dead serious about it.
Oh, my God. I was thinking along the lines.
As much as you want to, you just cannot help these people.
I was thinking along the lines that they might take some of that, what is that, like Rust-Oleum stuff that they spray on the bottom of the boat with the screen
keep
porch.
It afloat or whatever. They float that away.
They're going to spray that throughout their whole trailer, and then they'll have a boat like Noah's Ark or something like that.
You know, it just some people you're just not going to get through to. I mean, it's the same thing. You can tell people how dangerous it is to stand out here in the ocean too when the water goes out and then somebody won't listen. Somebody, will pay the price for that.
Well, so, it's like I've said, there's a lot of dumb people
I'm looking now on Twitter,
out there.
And I'm watching. Yeah, I'm watching right now on Twitter, and they're watching the water gauges in Naples. Was just down, and again, we'll see what happens with it. See if anybody ends up paying the price.
Yep.
Again, this is coming in live as of it's happening, so you'll hear it about on Monday.
Yep.
But water was 4 feet below where it normally is anyway, because it's all gotten taken out. It was like what we call kind of a minus or a negative storm surge, and now it has rapidly come back in within the last.
Oh my gosh.
I would say 25 minutes. It's risen 2 feet in that one area, so it's going to keep on rising. Then another 10 to 15 feet was this eye passes Naples. So
that is so much water.
It's not tsunami-ish. It's not tsunami-ish, but at the same time, where it rushes in very fast.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's talk more records.
I want to hear some of the records that they've broken and maybe set.
And I don't know if you can hear this or not. That's 2 pages of records that the storm has broken, and this is some pretty small print. So I just kind of highlighted some. So 185 miles per hour.
Yep.
That's sustained winds. This is not; those aren't gusts. That's 185 miles per hour. What's an IndyCar run? 200, 220.
Yeah, I think a fast lap would be the 220. I think that'd be the fastest.
Let's say they're getting close to warming up or whatever. They're doing some of the warm up laps, pace car wise. Yeah. So anyway, that's sustained for 37 hours. That was not only the strongest storm to exist out. It was the strongest storm in the Atlantic ever.
Yes.
Not the Caribbean or Gulf of Mexico. We've had some stronger ones in the Caribbean and the Gulf where the water is a little bit more shallow and warmer.
Mm-hmm.
But in the open Atlantic, it was 185 miles per hour. It was that strength for 37 hours. That's the longest. We talked about that. That anyone has, any storm has maintained that kind of intensity. So 37 hours. In terms of the pressure, and we measure kind of intensity too sometimes with pressure. Pressure-wise, it was 914 millibars. On a good day here, like what it is right now outside, it's probably about 1012 to 1,014 millibars. That's a high pressure, a really nice day, or even 1020.
That's crazy.
So that's sunny. So then it keeps on going down from there. A nasty day when it rains here. Let's put it at about 1,002, 1,008, or something like that, lower end.
Yeah.
So that it doesn't sound like much of a difference. You're saying 1020, 10 to 14 to 1020-ish. High pressure day, low pressure day here with rain or whatever drizzle is between 1,000 and 1,008 or something like that. This is 914. So you drop 100 millibars from a high pressure day here, and that's what we're dealing with now. There have been that have been stronger, but this is the lowest pressure in an Atlantic hurricane outside of the Western Caribbean in the Gulf of Mexico on record. So again, there have been stronger ones in the Gulf, but in terms of the Atlantic, strongest one. It's the first Category 5 hurricane in the Atlantic since 2016. That was Matthew. Of course, that impacted Florida last year. Didn't ever make landfall, but it did impact Florida.
I do remember being worried about it.
Yeah, and the first one in the tropical Atlantic since Hugo in 1989. So it's been a while. That was when I was born. So it's been a few years. Let me think here. This is the first time ever we've had 2 Category 4 U.S. landfalls, continental U.S. We've had a couple in Hawaii.
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting one. Like the fact that
both are back to back. We had Harvey, then Irma. So 2 Cat 4s, so 2 very violent hurricanes. It's the first time we've had one in the continental United States ever. It's spent 10 and a half days so far as a major hurricane, so Cat 3 or higher.
Yeah.
That's a long time.
For it to stay together,
records. Right? Yeah, it's for just at 3 or higher, not even to stay together. And this has even made a landfall in Cuba. It was there, and it still didn't drop intensity really that much.
Yeah.
It generated more what we call accumulated cycle energy. I'm not going to dive into it, but ACE, it's a way to measure just how intense something is, how much energy it's really accumulated for its life term, and they do it an annual seasonal type ACE type thing as well. It's generated more energy than the first 8 named storms of the hurricane season before it. So Arlene, the Harvey, the Harvey, that sat over Texas for 7 days as a tropical storm. It had more energy than the first 8 storms combined.
That's crazy.
It generated, let's see, let me go back through this list. I didn't highlight these. It was the closest approach of a Category 5 hurricane ever to the Turks and Caicos.
Yep.
Obviously, and there were some pictures I threw up on Twitter too a little while back. They just got new visible satellite imagery. The clouds cleared enough just before Jose kind of pushed in.
Yeah.
To see kind of what the damage extent was or what it looked like from space in terms of what it looked like for Barbuda and some of the Virgin Islands and Barbuda. The visible satellite imagery, you look at some of that on Google Maps, it looks nice and green or whatever. They're lush tropical islands. When you look at the one before and the one after right next to each other after the storm hit, the island itself is brown. It is almost stripped the vegetation right off the island. And they've reported almost 95% losses in the Virgin Islands and in Barbuda. So they're going to be uninhabitable for a hot minute.
That's crazy.
First Category 5 hurricane to make landfall in Cuba since 1924. So that's been just under 100 years.
Jeez.
The first Category 4 hurricane here in the United States to make landfall in Florida, rather, not the United States, to make landfall in Florida since Charlie. That was 2004. First major hurricane to make landfall in Florida since 2005. It just keeps going. So, the records are impressive. They'll obviously they're going to retire Harvey too. I guarantee it.
Yeah.
So if it's there's something notable in the storms like Jose, if it doesn't make landfall, nothing's going to happen. They'll reuse that one in about 3-5 years or so.
Yeah.
You'll have another Jose. It's just like Katrina. Something memorable. If it causes a significant amount of damage, loss of life, something like that. They'll recycle the name, like Andrew back in '92, the last time a Cat 5 kind of came up and wrecked Florida real bad.
Yeah.
People talk about it for years. They compare things to it for years. They'll kind of recycle those names or retire those names rather instead of recycle.
Yeah.
So Harvey will be one. Irma will be one. You just won't hear those names anymore.
Who chooses the names? That's an interesting question I had.
The names are from the National Weather Service, the National Hurricane Center. They just have a list of names. Like this year, our next storm that will probably form out in the open Atlantic past Jose and Katia, which already went to Mexico, will be Lee.
Okay.
So the L name is Lee this year. And then after that, Maria, Nate, Ophelia, Philippe. Rita,
so it kind of goes in
Sean,
like alphabetical order.
It goes alphabetical order, and it goes back and forth between male and female names.
Yeah.
So we had Irma, which is we had Harvey, which is a male name. Then it goes to I, which is a female name, Irma. Then back to Jose, which is a male name. Then female at Katia, and now it'll be Lee.
Okay.
It's a male name. So
that's going to answer a lot of people's questions, I think, because a lot of people don't know why they get chosen that way.
They just randomly kind of select names. They have them planned out for the next several years as well. Hold on, let me do some typing here real quick.
You're all right.
And, briefly, just in case you say something, but let me do Atlantic. Because I don't know them outside of this year, and this year I'm still not, caught up. This is not something that really impacts Indiana a whole lot, so I don't have to memorize. Atlantic hurricane names So let's see if we can find some of these. It's the National Hurricane Center. They just have a whole catalog, and right now they already have them planned out to 2022. So if you want to look ahead to see if your name's going to be coming up in a year, I'll even do a search here.
I want to know when Hurricane Justin's coming.
Up. Unfortunately, they don't have Brad coming up anytime soon either.
Hurricane Brad.
And another fun fact with these names, kind of, if they run through, and we've had it before, Wilma. There's some names that are missing too. There's no Q's.
Yeah.
You'll notice the list goes A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, and then you skip Q because there's not enough Q names to go around. R, S, T.
They don't want to do U names. They don't want to do Quixote or
Queen. That's all. There's really just not enough Q names to go around. They'd run out, especially if one had to be retired. So then. So you skip Q, then you go to RST. There's no U name. Mm-hmm. So if you look at the list too, there's no U's. Then you have V, W, and there's also no X, Y, or Z.
Yeah, that makes sense. But it would be funny if they would throw some of those in there every now and then.
It's just how they roll. It's the National Hurricane Center. So in terms of that, after they get past W, let's say we had the Wilma or whatever, 2005. After that, if there's still more storms to go that need to be named, they then go to the Greek alphabet.
Okay.
So then they just start and they go from there. So alpha, omega, blah, blah. They keep on going through all that.
Wow. So thank you for doing this, man. I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to do it. Before you go, just like a last minute thing, for people that either are, if we're still dealing with the storm, like if it's still going on, kind of some advice for that.
Well, if this comes out, let's say this comes out Monday, and it does.
Yeah.
You're listening to this, it's Monday. Happy Monday, everybody. Back to work here in Indiana. What a wonderful day.
Yes.
No, this storm will be impacting us early next week.
Okay.
So Monday's still going to be nice. It's probably really nice outside. It's probably a little bit warmer. It's still a little bit sunny outside, according to my forecast, which is never wrong.
Yeah, there you go.
Now, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday is when we're going to start to feel the impacts from Irma. By Monday afternoon, it depends on what time of the day you're listening to this. Monday afternoon, you're going to start to, if you go outside and you look up, you'll start to see some of these high, thin clouds coming in from the south.
Yep.
Not really ominous or anything, just enough you'll see some high, thin clouds rolling in from the south, very high up, very thin. They're probably just going to be blocking out the sun a little bit. Those will be the outer bands from Irma as they slide their way back in, or what will be the remnants thereof as Irma starts to slide inland. It won't be a hurricane anymore, but we might see as early as Tuesday some of those outer rain bands coming in. It's going to be rainy. It's going to be a little bit breezy, probably 25 to 30 mile per hour winds Tuesday and Wednesday. Now, by Thursday, the official track does have the tropical depression. It will still be a depression at that point. Remember, we talked the Saffir-Simpson scale. Tropical depression is anything with winds less than 38 miles per hour, but it's still tropically fueled. So at that point, they still think it's going to have enough of an oomph, but it's going to be less than 38 miles per hour sustained winds at the center. So where we're going to be, it's going to be centered in southern Indiana. They have it somewhere between southern Indiana, but as far north as us, too, in Indy.
Yeah, absolutely.
At that point, there's still a lot of uncertainty. But right now, if it follows the center of the line, which it never does, it'll be in southern Indiana near somewhere, Lawrence County or so, Bedfordish. Yeah. And we'll have winds probably sustained, or at least gusting. Sustained probably around 25, 30, and then gusting maybe to 40, 45, and some bad spots and some of the stronger storms that come through. So we'll have some rain Tuesday, Wednesday, and especially Thursday as it gets a little bit closer to us, and then it'll fizzle out late Thursday. And I think by next Friday, Saturday, Sunday, we'll start to clear back out.
Yeah.
So you'll start to see some repercussions from it, some implications or whatnot from the storm, but it won't be until Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday.
Yeah, and it's super interesting to think that something that's that far away is going to make an impact on how our local weather is affected as well. I think that's just a really cool thing and an interesting thing.
Yeah, sometimes they make it this far north that it kind of has to be quiet like it is right now. There's nothing to really push it out of the way. Sometimes, let's say we had a strong storm front coming in, a cold front tomorrow or whatnot, it would sweep it then out in the Atlantic. It would only impact the southeast. We'd see some rain from a tropical system, and that would help to push it on out. That's what has been kind of steering it now. There was a storm system coming out of Texas that helped to push it back into Florida instead of letting it go in the Gulf.
Oh, yeah.
So it's weird how other systems can steer hurricanes too. But yeah, I mean, as it's quiet now, it has nothing but to keep on coming up. Winds are calm here as well for the most part, so it's just going to keep on, skimming its way on up until it gets caught up late next week and swept back off the east. So
All right, man. Well, thank you for taking your time to do this. It was very impromptu, but you are a professional as always, and coming with the fire from Wish TV8 over there.
I do what I can, and I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah.
Maybe the 100th show. When's that coming up?
It's coming up soon because this should be 76 or 77, one of those two. I'm trying to figure
77, all right.
So we got a ways to go.
Let me know when the 100 comes around.
Yeah, we're gonna we'll do a big celebration for 100. It may not even be worth putting on the air.
Will there be free adult beverages?
Yes, absolutely.
All right, well, count me in.
All right, well, we will talk to you later, man. Thanks for doing it.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.